Section 51 of Modern Magic. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Blazely Dragon. Modern Magic, a Practical Treatise on the Art of Conjuring, by Professor Lewis Hoffman. Stage Tricks, Part 6. The Magic Drum. This is in appearance an ordinary side drum, but being hung up by cords from the ceiling, it will forthwith, without any visible drumsticks, give either a single rap or a roll, or keep time to any piece of music. It will further answer questions and tell fortunes, indicate chosen cards, etc., after the manner of the magic bell. These mysterious effects are produced by two hammers or drumsticks, fixed against one end of the drum on the inside. Each of these is attached to the keeper of an electromagnet, but there is a difference in the mode of their working. One works after the manner of the bell, giving a single tap whenever contact is made, but henceforth remaining silent until the circuit is again broken and again completed. In other words, each pressure of the connecting stud produces one rap, and no more. The second hammer is differently arranged. By means of what is called a contact breaker, the movement of the keeper, when attracted by the magnet, of itself breaks the circuit. The circuit being broken, the iron is no longer magnetic and the keeper flies back to its old position, thereby once more completing the circuit. As long as the pressure on the stud continues, therefore, the circuit is alternatively made and broken in rapid succession, involving a corresponding movement of the keeper and hammer, and producing a roll of the drum. The use of the two hammers involves the necessity of two electrical circuits and two connecting studs, and of the three cords to suspend the drum, one being common to both circuits. With a little practice in the management of the two studs, the single rapper may be made to beat time to a tune, while the other stud brings in the roll at appropriate intervals. There are some drums, of an inferior character, made with one hammer only, such hammer being arranged for the roll. Where it is desired to give a single rap, this may be effected by pressing and instantly releasing the stud with a light, quick touch, but some little dexterity is required. In the case of all these applications, for magically answered questions, it is necessary that the assistant who has the control of the apparatus should be in such a position as to distinctly hear the question asked. In fortune-telling matters the answer may generally be left to his own discretion, but for indicating what card is chosen, etc., it is necessary either that an agreed card be forced, or that a carefully arranged code of verbal signals should be employed, whereby the form of the question may itself indicate the proper answer. Considerable fun may be caused by the magician selecting an evidently engaged couple, and after asking how many months it will be before they are married, etc., inquiring in a stage whisper how many children they are destined to be blessed with. The drum raps steadily up to, say, 5, and this is accepted as the answer when, after a moment's pause, 2 more raps are heard in quick succession. This alarming omen is received with general laughter, amid which the drum gives another rap, and then another, continuing until the performer, scandalized at its behavior, unhooks it from the cords and carries it, still rapping, off the stage. This last effect is wholly independent of electricity, being produced by the performer tapping with his fingers that end of the drum which for the time being is furthest from the audience. There are some few other tricks performed by the aid of electricity, but anyone who understands the principle of those above described may make a very shrewd guess at the working of the remainder. All tricks of this class, though ingenious and effective, are open to one of two serious objections. In the first place, the apparatus is very costly, and secondly, they are unpleasantly liable, from the nicety of their mechanism and the absolute necessity of perfect electrical connection in all their parts, to hang fire at the critical moment and leave the operator in a very embarrassing position. Imagine the feelings of a performer who, having just introduced his wonderful drum, which is to display unheard of oracle powers, finds that the instrument remains as mute as the celebrated harp in Tara's hall, and refuses to bear out, in the smallest degree, his grandiloquent assertions. Yet this unpleasant result may occur at any time from the simple breaking of a wire, or some even slighter cause. This, it appears to us, is a serious drawback to electrical tricks, though, where they are exhibited at their best, no illusions are more beautiful, or have more of a genuine magic about them. We should mention before quitting the subject of these tricks, that in order to avoid the trouble and expense of fixing the necessary conducting wires in a building not specially appropriated to magical performances, an upright brass rod, which may be detached at pleasure, is sometimes fitted on each side of the performer's table. See Figure 311. And the apparatus in use, drum, bell, cash box, etc., is suspended by appropriate cords between these rods. The conducting wires are connected within the table with the lower ends of the brass uprights, and thence pass down its hinder legs to the battery behind the scenes. There are many considerations of convenience in favor of this arrangement, but the tricks performed are less effective than where the apparatus is hung fairly from the ceiling and apparently out of all possible reach of mechanical influence. The aerial suspension. This is a very old trick performed originally by the Indian jugglers, who kept the modus operandi a profound secret. The ingenuity, however, of Robert Houdin penetrated the mystery, and in 1849 he made it a special feature of his séances fantastiques. At that time the public mind was much interested in the aesthetic qualities of ether, which had then recently been discovered. Robert Houdin manipulated this fact into a valuable advertisement. He gave out that he had discovered in the popular anesthetic a still more marvelous property, viz., that when inhaled under certain conditions it neutralized the attraction of gravitation in the person inhaling it, who became for the time being light as air. In proof of this, he brought forward his youngest son, then a child of 10, or thereabouts, and after having made him smell a small vial, really empty, but supposed to contain ether, caused him to recline in mid-air, with no other support than that afforded by, to all appearances, an ordinary walking-stick, placed in a vertical position under his right elbow. It is characteristic of Robert Houdin's minute attention to the mise-en-scène of a trick, that while his son sniffed at the empty bottle, his assistant, behind the scenes, poured genuine ether upon a hot shovel, so that the fumes, reaching the nostrils of the audience, might prove indirectly but convincingly that ether was really employed. After the retirement of Robert Houdin from the stage, the trick fell comparatively out of notice, till it was revived in a new form by Fakir of Oulu, Professor Sylvester in England, and contemporaneously by D. Vera on the Continent. A full-grown young lady was in this case the subject of the illusion, and was made, while still suspended in air, to assume various costumes and characters. The illusion in this new form took the fancy of the public, and brought forth a host of imitators, but few have presented it with the same completeness as the two performers named. For a time it produced quite a marked sensation, equal crowds thronging to see Sylvester in London, and De Vere in Paris, St. Petersburg, Brussels, Peth, Dresden, Strasbourg, and other continental cities. Recent mechanical improvements, to which the last-named professor has materially contributed, have greatly heightened the effect of the trick, the lady being made to rise spontaneously from the perpendicular to the horizontal position, and to continue to float in the air after her last ostensible support has been removed. Apart from these special mysteries, which we are not at liberty to reveal, the trick is as follows. The performer brings forward the girl or boy who is to be the subject of the illusion, and who is dressed in some fancy costume. A low bench or table, say 5 feet in length, by 2 in width, and on legs about 6 inches in height, is brought forward and shown to be wholly disconnected from the floor or stage. On this is placed a small stool on which the subject of the experiment, whom in the present instance will be supposed to be a young lady, mounts. She extends her arms, and under each is placed a stout rod or pole of appropriate length. See Fig. 312. The performer makes pretended mesmeric passes over her, and in a minute or two her head is seen to droop, and after a few more passes her eyes close, and she is, to all external appearances, in a mesmeric sleep. The operator now takes the stool from under her feet, when she hangs suspended between the two rods. Again, a few more passes, and the operator removes the rod that supports the left arm, and gently mesmerizes the arm down to the side. Still the girl hangs motionless, and with no other support than the single upright rod on which her right arm rests. See Fig. 313. The operator now drapes her in various costumes, still keeping up from time to time the supposed mesmeric passes. Bending her right arm so as to support her head, he next lifts her gently to an angle of 45 degrees to the upright rod, as shown by the dotted line in Fig. 313, and finally raises her to a horizontal position, as in Fig. 314. An inspection of the diagrams will already have furnished the clue to the mysteries. Of the two upright rods, one, that is placed under the left arm, is wholly without preparation, and may be freely handed for examination. The other, A, is either of iron throughout, this was the case with the pretended walking stick used by Robert Houdin, or of well-seasoned wood with an iron core, and capable of bearing a very heavy weight. The lower end of this sinks into a socket in the low board or table, already mentioned, and thus becomes for the time being a fixture. In the upper end is hollowed out a small space about an inch in depth, for the purpose of which will presently appear. The subject of the experiment wears, underneath her page's costume, a sort of iron corset, or framework, similar to that shown in Fig. 313 and 314, and more in detail in Fig. 315. An iron girdle, A passes nearly round the waist, the circle being completed by a leather strap. At right angles to this, on the right side, is fixed an iron upright, B, extending from just below the armpit nearly to the knee, but with a joint, C, working backwards and forwards only. At the hip, a strap, D, round the leg, keeping it in position so as to allow of bending the thigh. From the back of the iron girdle, in the center, proceeds a crutch, E, also of iron, passing between the legs and connected with the girdle, front and rear. A fourth strap, F, constructed with the girdle in front and rear, passes over the left shoulder, and prevents any risk of the apparatus slipping downwards. To the upper part of the upright, B, immediately below the armpit, is riveted a short flat piece of iron, G, working freely upon it. The end of G, which forms the joint shown enlarged in Fig. 316, is welded into a semicircular ratchet with 3 teeth corresponding with a check H lying parallel with B, and which in its normal position is pressed up closely into the teeth of the ratchet by a spring, but may be withdrawn by a downward pressure on the hook I. The opposite end of G has projecting from its underside at right angles an iron plug, J, which just fits into the cavity before mentioned in the top of the rod, A. There is an opening in the under part of the sleeve to give passage to this plug, which when inserted in the corresponding cavity of A makes G, relatively to it, a fixture. The remainder of the iron framework, and with it the lady, remains movable to the extent that, by means of the joint at G, it can be made to describe an arc of 90 degrees to the upright rod. The mode of operation will be clear. When the young lady mounts on the stool and extends her arms, the performer, in placing the upright beneath them, takes care to let the lower end of A sink properly into the socket, and to adapt the plug J to the cavity at top. The apparatus is now in the position shown in Figure 313, and when the stool is removed, the lady is left apparently resting only on A, but in reality comfortably seated in her iron cage, the different parts of which are carefully padded so as to occasion her no discomfort. Her legs and arms, being quite free, may be placed in any position that the performer chooses, and when presently he lifts her into a slanted position, as shown by the dotted line in Figure 313, the check drops into the second tooth of the ratchet, and thus maintains her in that position. After a short interval, she is lifted into the horizontal position, as in Figure 314, when the check drops into the third tooth of the ratchet, and so maintains her, apparently sleeping upon an aerial couch. As the support terminates above the right knee, the legs are kept extended by muscular power. This attitude is therefore very fatiguing, and for that reason cannot be continued for more than a few moments. To replace the lady in the upright position, the performer places both hands under the recumbent figure, the left hand easily finding through the tunic and drawing down the hook I, thereby withdrawing the check and allowing the lady to sink down gently to the perpendicular. The stool is again placed under her feet, and the second upright under her left arm before the operator begins to de-mesmerize her, which he does after the orthodox fashion with reverse passes, the lady simulating as best she may the bewildered and half-scared expression of one newly awakened from a mesmeric trance. End of Section 51. Recording by Blazely Dragon.